don't know if you guys have seen what's been going on in Greenland recently, but I've had a lot of videos about it. Definitely subscribe anyway for more awesome videos. But the U.S. is going full Don Roe doctrine and is going for full control of the western hemisphere of the planet. And it's not a shock that I am fully supportive of this. I don't have a problem with this at all. It's not colonization, it's conquering. That's all I'm saying. And Trump has come out and done some pretty crazy things in the way of Greenland, and the EU's not happy about it, and Denmark's not happy about it, but you know, whatever. So we're going to cover that. So this is USA Today. This is this, no, I don't need to cover this. I had something I wanted to cover before this. Alright, so this is Fox News. This is why exactly Trump wants Greenland. Now, I have had a lot of different videos on this, so I already know why he wants Greenland. Listen, it's already on our side of the planet, so it basically needs to be ours. It's absolutely an essential place for the Golden Dome missile defense system that Trump wants to implement. We have a bunch of stuff over in Alaska. We need something over in Greenland as well. We already guarantee its safety militarily because we have bases and stuff there, and it's already a self-governing territory, right? So Denmark doesn't really do anything at all for it, and they don't even protect it militarily. Most people live kind of on the outskirts, and the United States really needs access to the natural resources there, particularly the rare earth minerals. And I'm not sure how much liquefied natural gas is up there, but regardless, there's a lot of rare earth minerals, and that's mostly why the United States needs it and wants it and should have it, and nobody can stop us, so says Steve Miller. Anyway, this is Fox News. This is why Trump zeroed in on Greenland in 3 different maps. Now, there is a video, but I'm not going to watch it. I'm just going to go straight to the maps. We're going to look at these real quick. Greenland's population is coastal and sparse. Just like I said, about 56,000 people live in Greenland, most clustered in small coastal communities, with the island's vast interior largely uninhabited. Yes, that's mostly because it's an icy wasteland, but that's not the point. People live on the outskirts because they need to be able to live on the outskirts, because if they ever need anything, they need to live on a port, right? So this is all the cities. They're mostly on the outskirts, okay? Anyway, moving on. Despite its small population, Greenland occupies a landmass comparable to global powers. By land area, it ranks among the largest territories on scale, and a scale has drawn attention from countries such as the United States, Russia, and China as competition in the Arctic intensifies. Yep, because as the ice starts to melt, more things start getting opened up, new sea routes start getting opened up, etc., and the United States needs it in terms of, national defense. Anyway, moving on. Also, I was pretty sure I saw somewhere that if all of the ice in Antarctica melted, it would create a gigantic freshwater lake right in the middle that would be larger than any other freshwater lake on the planet. I don't know. I'm not sure how true that is exactly, but I'm fairly certain I read that somewhere. Moving on. Greenland's location off Canada's northeastern coast places it at the heart of the Arctic defense planning. The U.S. has maintained a military outpost in northwestern Greenland since 1953 at the Pituffik Space Base, now operated by the U.S. Space Force. Yeah, it used to be an Air Force base. Russia also maintained several military installations in the region, while China has sought greater access since declaring itself a near-Arctic state in 2018. So, how Greenland's size stacks up against countries with interests in the region. So, Greenland is about half the size of 27 countries that make up the European Union. Let's see here. Greenland 2.2. I'm not sure what all this is exactly. Okay, we're just going to move on. But geographically isn't the only reason Greenland draws global interests. Retreating Arctic ice is opening shipping lanes around the island that could significantly shorten trade routes between North America, Europe, and Asia, adding an economic layer to its strategic importance. Yes, this is what I've already talked about. As more ice gets opened, as more ice starts to melt, particularly around up here in like the northwestern part of it, or northeastern, excuse me, as more ice starts to melt up there, it's actually easier to go from here up over the globe to get to Asia and to get to Europe and things than it would be to go across the long way. The only reason we were going across the oceans is because of all the ice that was on the pole. But now that it's starting to melt, we can go up over, and it's actually a hell of a lot easier. And the fact that that is opening up means that they can start running supplies and military logistical trade routes and things like that. So we really need to get some bases up there, and unfortunately, America's just going to have to take it, whether they give it to us or not. Rare earth element. Okay, Trump threatens tariffs. All right, we'll cover that in a minute. Rare earth elements, a group of 17 minerals, sit at the center of the modern economies and militaries. It allows electronics to be smaller, more powerful, and more efficient, and are especially important in high-performance magnets used in electric vehicles, wind turbine generators, and precision guidance systems. Yes, absolutely, 1,000%. We need access to the rare earth minerals. Listen, hot take, if we get Greenland, we don't need access to Taiwan anymore, because we will have access to the rare earth minerals. Now, I do still think that Taiwan would be a great strategic important resource, or strategic location rather, but we wouldn't necessarily need their resources. If America, first, listen, we recently went in and ripped the Venezuelan dictator out of his bed in the middle of the night, took 0 casualties doing it, and thinking about it, I don't think there is a single country in the Western Hemisphere that the United States couldn't do that very same thing to. There is not one. Canada, we could definitely do it. Mexico, we could definitely do it. Brazil, we could do it. Peru, we could do it. Venezuela, we already did it. Cuba and Colombia, they're wanting us to try, and honestly, I think we could do it. So if the U.S. wants Greenland, who is anybody to stop them, says Stephen Miller. Anyway, the world's largest rare earth mineral deposits are found in China, Vietnam, Brazil, Russia, Australia, Greenland, and the United States. But China dominates the supply chain, accounting for roughly 60% of global mining and more than 90% of current processing capacity. Yeah, China processes most of everything, which is a big problem for everybody, but they've spent the last couple of decades shipping all manufacturing over to their nation, right? So whatever. The United States lacks a reliable end-to-end supply chain for rare earths, leaving it dependent on foreign sources, which is mostly why we're going to support Taiwan, just because we get a lot of rare earth minerals from them. That's literally the only reason that I can think of. As the U.S. and European Union seeks to reduce their reliance on China, Greenland has emerged as a potential counterweight to Beijing's dominance and a focal point in the competition over critical minerals. Whether the Trump administration is able to strike a deal to take over Greenland remains unclear, but as ice melts and competition in the Arctic intensifies, the island's strategic importance is only likely to grow. Well, that's fair, and honestly, they're 1,000% correct about that, Anyway, so like we were covering earlier, USA Today says that Trump vows tariffs on 8 European nations over Greenland. So listen, the EU is not fucking happy with the Trump administration telling the United Nations to fuck off and that we're going to take Greenland and there's nothing you can do about it. So the EU decided to say they were going to send a bunch of troops over to Greenland, and so they had small little naval vessels there. They had, I don't know if they had any troops or anything like that. But anyway, so Trump got a little upset about that. This here says that President Donald Trump vowed to implement a wave of increasing tariffs on European allies until the United States is allowed to buy Greenland. You will give it to us, or else, escalating a row over the future of Denmark's vast Arctic island. Listen, Denmark was just had it kind of given to them. That's really all that it is. Anyway, so this is their take on this, I guess. I don't know what this is. We're gonna see.
President Donald Trump on Saturday vowed to implement a wave of increasing tariffs on European allies until the United States is allowed to buy Greenland.
Okay, I can't hear that. Let's see. So this is the U.S. consulate. It looks like there's protests and stuff outside the U.S. consulate in Newark.
Escalating a diplomatic rift over the Arctic island, even as protesters there marched in support of self-determination.
Okay,
In a post on
Greenland's
Truth
not for
Social,
sale,
Trump
yada,
said
yada, yada.
additional
President
10%
Trump starting
import
on
tariffs would take
February 1st.
effect
All
on
of the above
February
mentioned countries,
1st
Denmark,
on goods
Norway,
from
Sweden,
Denmark,
France,
Norway,
Germany, the
Sweden,
United Kingdom,
France,
Netherlands,
Germany,
and
the
Finland will be
Netherlands,
charged a 10%
Finland,
tariff
and
on
Great
any and all
Britain,
goods sent to the
all
United
already
States.
subject to
Ooh, yeah,
tariffs
get your people
imposed
out of
by
my
Trump.
fucking hemisphere.
Those tariffs would increase to
Land is
25% on
included
June
in it. The United
1st
States and
and would
America is
continue
immediately
until a
open
deal was
negotiation with
reached for
Denmark
the
and/or
U.S.
any
to
other
purchase
countries that are,
Greenland, Trump
have to be
wrote.
put at risk
Leaders
despite
of
all that
both
we are
Denmark
doing to
and
protect
Greenland
them.
have insisted the island is not for sale and does
Yep,
not
okay,
want to be
this is-
part of the
this is,
United
big
States.
protest
A
on the
sentiment
outside
voiced
of,
by
the US
protesters in
consulate
Nuuk on
alright.
Saturday.
We are not interested in being Americans.
Trump has repeatedly
No, you are not interested in being Americans. That's just because you guys don't understand what it's going to be like, okay? We will put a brothel on every street corner.
said Greenland is vital to U.S. security because of its strategic location.
I like how colorful all of their houses are. You know, like it's not just like a copy and paste houses like you have in the United States and a lot of different housing communities. It's all kind of personalized, and I really like that. I hate the fact that they have to live in these conditions and definitely on the water like that. But hey, whatever.
And large mineral deposits, and has not ruled out
Okay,
taking
so
the
it's just talking
autonomous
about Greenland
territory of
doing stuff.
Denmark.
Anyway, so yeah, Trump vows to put tariffs on the countries that are getting in his fucking way until they allow us to take Greenland. And ultimately, I think eventually Don Roe Doctrine's going to kick in and we're just going to take it. You know what I mean? But whatever. Trump's trying it the peaceful way first. We're going to see what happens. Obviously, people don't like the fact that Trump is saying that we're going to tariff every nation that's trying to help Greenland. And so this is NBC News. They're covering the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, by the way. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent defends Greenland's tariffs. The national emergency is avoiding the national emergency. You know what? That's fair. Let's see what he has to say.
Now is Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Secretary Bessent, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning, Kristen. Good to be with you.
It's great to have you here. Thank you for being here in person. Let's start right there. President Trump threatening to impose steep tariffs against some of America's closest European and NATO allies. The leaders of Denmark and Greenland say bluntly, Greenland is not for sale. What makes President Trump think it is?
Kristen, if we look for years, for over a century, American presidents have wanted to acquire Greenland, and what we can see is that Greenland is essential to the U.S. national security. We're building the Golden Dome, the missile system, and look, President Trump is being strategic. He's looking beyond this year. He's looking beyond next year to what could happen for a battle in the Arctic. We are not going to outsource our national security. We are not going to outsource our hemispheric security to other countries. In Trump 1.0, President Trump told the Europeans, do not build Nord Stream 2. Do not rely on Russian oil. And guess what, Kristen? Guess what is funding Russia's efforts against Ukraine? European purchases of Russian oil. So America has to be in control here.
I want to delve into everything that you said, but I just want to ask you big picture. Is this a negotiating tactic, Mr. Secretary, or is President Trump serious about annexing Greenland?
President Trump strongly believes that we cannot outsource our security because, Kristen, let me tell you what will happen.
Why would it make sense to outsource our security? Listen, if let's, I don't want to say this, but I was recently on a collab with another VTuber, and we were looking at infographics, like making his new video on the U.S. versus the rest of the world. Like, how would that war play out? And so if that was to go down, anyway, definitely go over to Silas Frostrunner, to his channel, and check that out. You can see the collab probably on my channel, too. Definitely subscribe to him. He's awesome. Love that guy. Love it. Love everything they have going on over there. Anyway, so if that was to happen, and I'm not saying that I want it to, if that was to happen, it would make the most sense for the U.S. to be as self-sufficient as possible. Because if we rely on any other nation, then we're basically screwed. Much like most of the countries in the United Kingdom, in the EU, because they rely very heavily on other countries for the resources that they need to survive. So the problem with the EU is that if they go to war over there, it's going to affect everybody because of how intertwined all of their economies are. And the U.S. can basically just wait it out, which is why it's so dangerous that the U.S. is as strong as it is, because it can literally starve the rest of the country, and it won't really affect the U.S. citizens all that much because we can provide everything for ourselves. That's why I say it's not unrealistic to think that the U.S. just controls the Western Hemisphere, because it literally does. It's the only country over here that matters in any way.
Happen, and it might not be next year, might not be in 5 years, but down the road, this fight for the Arctic is real. We would keep our NATO, our NATO guarantees, and if there were an attack on Greenland from Russia, from some other area, we would get dragged in. So better now. Peace through strength, make it part of the United States, and there will not be a conflict, because the United States right now, we are the hottest country in the world. We are the strongest country in the world. The Europeans project weakness. The U.S. projects strength.
But just very quickly, is this a negotiating tactic, Mr. Secretary? Is the goal to get a deal to have enhanced security in Greenland, for example?
The president believes that enhanced security is not possible without Greenland being part of the U.S.
Okay, let me press you on what you have said are national security concerns, particularly as it relates to Russia and China. Senior Democrats say there are no pressing threats on Greenland's security from Russia or China. The Danish foreign minister says there hasn't been a Chinese warship in Greenland for a decade. What evidence do you have that this is a pressing threat?
Well, to be fair, there hasn't been a Chinese warship in a decade, you know what I mean?
First of all, Kristen, we have asymmetric information, and again, President Trump is being strategic here. What evidence was there that the Russians were going into Crimea? What evidence was it? Well, actually, there was a lot of evidence that the Russians were going to go into Ukraine, and Joe Biden said, well, just take a little bit of it. But No,
Joe Biden literally said, like, oh, well, you know, it depends on what kind of invasion. Because if it's just like a small thing, then, like, we're not going to worry about it, you know? Y'all remember that? You remember that? Definitely. I remember that.
No, is that the U.S., that Greenland can only be defended if it is part of the U.S., and it will not need to be defended if it is part of the U.S. The president is trying to avoid a conflict.
You bring up Crimea. The president, as far as I have heard, has not taken military force off the table. If the United States were to take Greenland by force, how would that be different than Russia's annexation of Crimea?
Look, I believe that the Europeans will understand that this is best for Greenland, best for Europe, and best for the United States.
So, but military action is still on the table?
I haven't spoken with the president on that, and again, I believe that
Listen, we don't want it to be on the table, but, like, I mean, that's really not up to us, you know what I mean? Like, it's an option, and we'll go there if we need to, but it's not up to us whether or not we have to do that.
Europeans will understand that the best outcome is for the U.S. to maintain or receive control of Greenland.
Well, so far what we've heard and seen from the Europeans is alarm and outrage. In fact, they're, as you know, holding an emergency meeting today, and part of the issues, the president has already reached a trade deal with the EU. How can countries have confidence in trade deals moving forward if President Trump is prepared to blow them up? Well, first of all, the trade deal hasn't been finalized, and an emergency action can be very different from another trade deal. We're in a very good equilibrium right now with China, but if China did something to upset that balance, I think the president would be
Well, I mean, we're in a good equilibrium, so to speak. Really, they're having a bit of an oil crisis given the turmoil in Iran and the blockade in Venezuela. But that's a different conversation. You know what I mean?
To act. Same thing with India. We were working on a trade deal with India, but the president, unlike the Europeans, started charging the Europeans 25% for buying Russian oil. So the president leverages his emergency powers to do this. I hear you saying that the deal hasn't been finalized, and yet it was moving toward finalization. Doesn't it undercut the United States' word by threatening these steep new tariffs? I think it does not. What it does is it enhances United States security. And again, we have seen the Europeans are unable to push back against Russia. The U.S. is this war that never would have started in Ukraine, Kristen. We are going to settle it, but it wouldn't have started. And what President Trump is trying to do is prevent.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the U.S. has been the global police for so long that every other nation's military has just become fat and lazy, right? So, like, they're really not ready to do anything. They have not had to spend any money on their own defense for a really long time, and it's allowed for them to start supporting and subsidizing a whole lot of socialist programs that have ended up destroying their country. So, I mean, you know, it's just like, listen, I don't know if the U.S. was playing the long game this whole time, but it definitely seems like we're coming out on top, you know what I mean?
A taking or the Russian-Chinese action in Greenland in the future. So why not be strategic? Why always live in the moment?
Okay, let's talk about being strategic. The United States has a base in Greenland. I've been talking to lawmakers on Capitol Hill. Denmark has given the United States a green light to beef up its security as much as is needed.
Great. Yeah, if we're going to do that, though, and we're going to keep being completely responsible for the military defense of Greenland, then we're just going to own it. I have there is no reason that we should be responsible for the defense militarily of a country if we don't own it. Like, what the hell? What?
In Greenland, why not?
Every single third world country in 2026 is going to become a state in the United States of America. You watch. We're going to Maduro treatment everybody.
Take that route? Why is it necessary to take over and annex all of Greenland, something that 85% of people living in Greenland oppose?
Well, again, and let's look back.
Listen, lady, their compliance is not a factor here, okay? Like, what are you even talking about, all right? The U.S. is going to do whatever they want because they have the big guns. What?
Denmark has a terrible history with Greenlanders. There was forced sterilizations up until the 80s or the 90s.
Ooh,
so all of a sudden, now that the U.S.
Hold on, okay, wait. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is saying that Denmark had forced sterilization on Greenland until like the 80s? Is that what he said? God damn, that's crazy.
Has expressed an interest. There is this new interest. And again, the United States needs to be in control to prevent a war, and that we do not want to get dragged into someone else's war.
Well, but this is about the United States' relationship with its allies, NATO allies, again, reacting with alarm. They're warning that this move to annex Greenland could, in fact, destroy NATO. So let me just put this to you bluntly. Is Greenland or NATO more essential to the United States' national security?
Well, Chris, that's obviously a false choice. That's a
not from the perspective of European leaders.
The European leaders will come around and they will understand that they need to be under the.
Hey, listen, they'll come around. Trust me, lady. They will see the light eventually.
U.S. security umbrella. What would happen in Ukraine that if the U.S. pulled its support out? The whole thing would collapse. That the U.S., Kristen, to be clear, since 1980, the U.S. has spent U.S. military spending versus NATO military spending. We have spent $22 trillion more than the Europeans have. That we are peace through strength. And the Europeans now are only trying to play catch up. And that is only through President Trump. President Trump believes in NATO, but he does not believe in the American people being dragged in.
Well, in terms of the...
Now, he believes in NATO, but what he doesn't believe is the U.S. paying for everything for NATO, right? Like, come on.
Cost that has been paid Denmark.
If we're going to be Batman and just pay for everything for the Justice League, then we're going to be Batman in Gotham. I'm just saying. Like, and in this instance, the Western Hemisphere happens to be Gotham.
Denmark has stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States, including after 9/11. In fact, it lost more soldiers per capita in Afghanistan than any other NATO nation. Apart from the United States itself, Mr. Secretary, does President Trump want the United States to remain a part of NATO?
Of course.
Hot take, I don't. I actually do not want the United States to remain part of NATO. I think the U.S. should form an allegiance with maybe 3 or 4 other countries that are actually large and doing things and that matter, because there are an awful lot of people in NATO, an awful lot of countries in NATO that are fucking dog shit, right? So, like, I'm pretty sure Venezuela was a NATO country. Well, maybe not, but, like, Anyway, Denmark definitely is, and they're garbage. All these Democrats that are saying that we can't take this shit from Denmark, this is dumb. Why? Because Denmark has a king, and I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to like kings.
Of course, we are going to remain a part of NATO, but what President Trump does not want is
Brazil's definitely part of NATO. Yeah, there we go. Haha.
for a war to start and the U.S. get dragged in. Again, we are not going to outsource our Western Hemispheric security to others.
Yeah.
Let me ask you, broadly speaking, about the tariff
Listen,
portion
man,
of this.
This part of the planet belongs to the United States of America, and if you have a problem with it, you can f off.
The president, as you well know, has justified his authority to impose previous tariffs without going to Congress by declaring national emergencies. It's an issue before the Supreme Court right now. We're all awaiting the High Court's decision. What is the national emergency that justifies these new slate of tariffs?
The national emergency.
I can't find a good spot to keep my avatar while I'm watching this, so I'm just going to keep moving it around so I'm hopefully not blocking their faces, even though this is a face I'd really like to block right now.
Is avoiding a national emergency. That it is a strategic decision by the president. This is a geopolitical decision, and he is able to use the economic might of the U.S. to avoid a hot war. So why wouldn't we do that? You know, same thing. That what if that we had a national emergency coming with these gigantic trade balances that we had with the rest of the world? I've been in financial markets for 30, 45 years. Much better to be strategic, avoid the emergency.
You're saying it's a national emergency, but you're also saying it's a threat that's years away. How can both be true, Mr.
Oh, it's easy because a comet heading toward the planet is still an emergency, even if it won't get here until 5 years from now, right?
Secretary?
Because
This is the same type of people that claim that climate change is a global emergency, even though it's not an emergency until like 20 years from now. But they've been saying 20 years for the last 50 years, so who really knows exactly, right? You know?
Avoiding creating the emergency, Kristen. What if during the great financial crisis someone had raised their hand in 2005, 2006 and said stop with subprime mortgages, but no one did. President Trump is raising his hand, and that is preventing the emergency.
Do you think the Supreme Court will agree with that rationale, Mr. Secretary?
I believe that it is very unlikely that the Supreme Court will overrule a president's signature economic policy. They did not overrule Obamacare. I believe that the Supreme Court does not want to create chaos. We have set, as you said earlier, we have set these trade deals, and it is very good for the United States. We are balancing our trade deficit. You look, Europe is being overrun with Chinese goods. There is now an emergency in Europe. There's going to be an economic emergency.
Europe's got a much bigger emergency than that right now, but you know, that's a video for another time.
Will follow us. So President Trump is preempting this. If we go back to emergencies, he put a fentanyl tariff, Mexico, Canada, China. Guess what's happened to fentanyl deaths? If that's an emergency, I don't know what. October 8th, when the Chinese threatened to put rare earth export controls in the entire world, President Trump threatened a 100% tariff. And the Chinese came to the table, and we negotiated on behalf of the whole world.
All right, let me move to the Federal Reserve. I want to ask you about the revelations this week that the Department of Justice is investigating Jerome Powell and the Fed for allegedly going over budget in the Fed building renovations. Chairman Powell responded. He fired back at this. I want to play a little bit and get your reaction on the other side.
This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be
Trump hates this guy, right? Like the chair of the Federal Reserve?
directed by political pressure or intimidation.
Is President Trump committed to the independence of the Federal Reserve, Mr. Secretary?
Of course he's committed to the independence of the Federal Reserve, but
I'm not. I think the creation of the Federal Reserve is one of the worst things to happen in to the American economy. But that's, again, a video for another time.
Independence does not mean no oversight.
But doesn't this undercut the independence of the Federal Reserve that the Justice Department is investigating renovations?
If you guys ever look at your money, pull out like a dollar bill right now. It says Federal Reserve note. You want to know why? That's because that dollar bill equals $1 in debt. That's how that works.
There are renovations at the White House.
The renovations at the White House are not the 700 million, more than $1 billion, $1.5 billion, the over budget, Kristen. And the White House, that is being paid for with private funds.
Yes,
if I want to buy a new chair for my office,
I have no idea about the federal building, but I know that the White House is literally privately funded. It is not the taxpayer funds that is doing that. And it's also a common thing for a president to renovate the White House a little bit.
the Treasury, that is an appropriation. Just to understand, the Federal Reserve has magic money. They print their own money. So when you have no oversight, why not have a little sunlight? Kristen, I have called since last summer for the Fed to do its own internal investigation, and that has not been heeded. Not been heeded. And again, I don't know about you. When I receive if I were to receive inquiries from the Justice Department, I would answer them. They went unanswered.
Well, let me ask you, because Axios reported that you were not happy about DOJ's investigation, that you told President Trump as much. Axios writes, quote, a perturbed Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told President Trump late Sunday that the federal investigation into the Federal Reserve chair made a mess and could be bad for financial markets. That's according to two sources familiar with the call. Is that accurate?
Well, you know what, Kristen? I'm not going to discuss my conversations with the president, but if I said that, I was wrong. Financial markets, stock market went up, bond yields went down, so the markets are the ultimate.
It's true. All of the quote-unquote expert economists were wrong about the way that the economy was going to, the way that the economy would trend, given Trump's tariffs and shit. And I don't know about you guys, but I said a long time ago in a stream a while back, like months ago, I am not a financial expert. I am not a financial advisor. Don't take my word for it. I am just an idiot on the internet. Also, invest in the American economy right now.
Arbiter.
Invest in Raytheon right now. Boeing, invest in that right now.
So the markets are the ultimate arbiter over whether the Fed's independence is being impugned, and bond yields went down. I can tell you we had two of the best bond auctions that we have had in months for U.S. Treasuries, so the market is looking beyond this. And again, maybe the market wants some transparency from the Fed.
One final question for you, Mr. Secretary. Some Republican senators, as you know, are threatening to block the president's nominees over the Justice Department's investigation. Do you think the investigation needs to be dropped in order for the Senate to confirm the president's next pick to run the Fed?
I think that will be up to the senators.
But are you worried that they'll block the president's pick for the Fed?
I am not. I think we have four great candidates. I think that they will be quite happy with either of the four. I think we will move forward. I believe that we will probably be hearing from the Banking Committee soon on what they would like to see. And again, that supervision and bringing in some sunlight does not mean coercion.
All right. Thank you so much, Secretary Bessent, for being here to respond to all of the breaking developments.
Yep. Thank you so much, Secretary Bessent, for defending the United States military and its acquisition of Greenland, the 51st state of the United States of America. If we don't count Venezuela or Canada or Cuba or Colombia or, any other state, really, that is just going to become part of the United States. Listen, the United States is going to expand in 2026, and I am definitely here for it. Definitely subscribe. Definitely follow me on all the things if you're going to be going to X because you like based opinions and you like me calling out politicians and such. You can follow me at real_Sestel because for whatever reason Sestel was already taken, which is weird because I really thought that I was kind of individualized in this name, but I guess regular Sestel was already taken, which is, again, just the wildest thing to me. If you're watching me on Google or you're watching me on Rumble, then you can make sure that you're subscribed to me. It's not really cool that you're watching me and you're not subscribed. If you are on Kick and you're just watching my stream, because I stream all of these videos once a week, twice a week, whatever, just depending on how much time I have. I'm really trying to do twice a week this year. You can make sure to follow me on Kick.